very happy to be here today to introduce my team of proposers, seconder, and assenters for the presidential election, and to also talk about my vision and my purpose in standing for the presidential election. I said a little bit about this a month and a half ago when I announced that I intended to step down from government, and I will now I will now elaborate on my purpose and how I intend to be a president for a new era. I'm happy to be joined by my full team of proposer, assenter, and assenters, proposer, seconder, and assenters. I had put a lot of thought into whom I wanted to be with me. They are a group of Singaporeans who have a vision for the future and a track record of leadership in their own walks of life, in public service, in the business sector, on the ground in various initiatives, in interfaith cooperation and development of harmony, in working with labor, in advancing the green cause, in advancing the arts. And I'm proud to have them with me here today, because the election and my candidacy is not just about myself, but about our future. And I've stepped into this race because I believe very strongly in the need to evolve Singapore's culture, some of our norms, and the way we go about working with each other so that we remain a shining spot in the world in the future. I've spent my entire life, my entire adult life, in public service. Nothing could have been more meaningful. And I believe I can now best serve Singapore, not in politics, but as president, whose role has to be above politics. And as you know, I've resigned from the PAP and I've stepped down from a senior minister and from all my positions in government. I made this decision because I believe the challenges that Singapore faces are going to grow. And the elected presidency will be critical as part of our system of confidence, system of constantly building for the future, system of holding together as a people. The challenges are not merely about today or current circumstances. There will always be ups and downs. The challenges are more fundamental. We are in a time of transition. We are in a time of transition, both in Singapore and internationally. We are moving into a new era. Internationally, we all know what's happening. There may be a pause in relationships, pause in the relationship between the US and China, but the trajectory doesn't look good. And it's not just the US and China, but a gradually fragmenting world. And all countries are going to be tested in new ways in the years to come. Global crises are already breaking out more frequently. Economic, geopolitical, and of course environmental. They're already breaking out more frequently. That's part of the new landscape. That's part of the new era. And domestically, we are becoming a democracy with more diverse views. And as I've myself said repeatedly, I view this as inevitable and healthy. And what really matters, our real challenge, is to avoid becoming a divided society. It's one thing to have different views, it's another thing to disrespect each other and become more distant from each other and more divided. And that's what we absolutely have to avoid. It's happened in too many other societies, and it must never happen in Singapore. So we must be a democracy with more space for diverse views, civil society, but a democracy with a strong center that gives Singaporeans confidence in the future. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected as president, I pledge to bring my full experience and capabilities on the ground, nationally and internationally. My full experience and capabilities on the ground, nationally and internationally, to serve as your president for this new and more challenging era. It will involve the key roles of the presidency as we all know it. The president has to be a unifying figure. The president has to safeguard our reserves and safeguard key appointments in the public service, safeguard the integrity of key appointments. And the president has to also be able to advocate for Singapore internationally and project Singapore's voice of reason internationally. I believe I bring a combination of experience and expertise in all three dimensions that will help Singapore in the years to come. Real experience in unifying people, a deep knowledge of finance and fiscal policies, and how we safeguard reserves. That comes from my many years of experience as a finance minister, deputy prime minister, and my other roles at the MAS and GIC. And finally, my international standing. I've been flying the Singapore flag high in a variety of top-level international fora, various councils and panels, and my ability to continue to add to Singapore by projecting our voice of reason, by bridging differences of views internationally, and by creating space for Singapore in so doing, is also what I bring to the presidency. So it's that combination of all three dimensions of the presidency that I offer my experience and capabilities on. I want to say that on the first dimension of unifying people, that I speak from real experience. My advantage, quite frankly, is I have been in politics for 22 years, on the ground. And it's not just a track record of being elected. It's not about the majorities I earn in each elections. It's a track record of how I've worked with people on the ground, built a culture of empathy and respect on the ground, mutual respect between people in Taman Jurong and Jurong for over 22 years. I spend a lot of my time on it, together with my wife Jane. And we've created initiatives, real initiatives that require time, energy, effort, constant morale boosting to help people with deep disadvantage, young people with deep disadvantage, ex-inmates, single mums, anyone who needs a second chance or a third chance in life. One of them, Waiki, who's with us here today, has himself become a community leader and a friend. So that's what we've been working on the ground. And that's what has been my real politics on the ground in Jurong. So when we talk about being a unifying figure, I do not say this rhetorically or just as an aspiration, but I speak from a real track record. And it includes a track record of respecting different views, including different political leanings, and constantly trying to find common ground. So that's the first dimension, playing the role of a unifying figure. The second dimension, everyone knows my expertise. I don't want to elaborate on it. My financial expertise, my deep knowledge of fiscal policy, and how to guard the reserves. And on the third role, again, I won't elaborate at any length, but everyone knows the roles I've been performing for Singapore internationally. And in most regards, in almost all those appointments, by the way, I was chosen by my international peers to chair and lead these various panels. And Singapore must always be a place where we have people who can play those roles. Some are amongst our civil servants, some are business leaders, some are ministers, and some like myself. And as a president, I intend to play that role actively. Never become a small country that becomes irrelevant. Stay a small country that is big on the international stage. Never too big for its boots, but always respected, well regarded, a country that people want partnerships with. We have to remain that way. Never underestimate the importance of Singapore's international reputation. It is critical to our future. I bring, however, not just expertise and experience in each of these three dimensions, unifying people, fiscal policy and financial policies, advancing our space internationally. I bring not just expertise and experience. I bring a more basic orientation in my life, integrity and independence of mind that I've held on to throughout my life. I'm known for it, both within government and outside government. I've always believed in playing in a team, but it's a team with views of our own. And that's the strength of the system, that we've been able to have debates within government, within cabinet, with differing views. Eventually, within cabinet, you have to come to a collective decision and abide by it. But the debates that take place before we come to a collective decision are very serious debates. And I played a very active role with my own perspective of issues, particularly on social and economic issues, that is part of my makeup. Now that I'm out of government, if I'm fortunate to be elected as president, of course I'm no longer bound by collective decisions, but I'm the same person. I don't have to change my colors like a chameleon. I'm the same person with the same integrity and the same independence of mind. And that remains critical for the role of the president, because when it comes to, especially when it comes to the president's powers on the spending of past reserves, on every aspect of fiscal policy that impinges on our reserves, and when it comes to making key appointments in the system, in the public service, that integrity and independence of mind is critical. So in short, what I bring is both the expertise and experience, as well as that integrity and independence of mind that I believe is going to be extremely important in the presidency in the years to come. Finally, let me say, I'm a deep optimist in Singapore's future. I'm a deep optimist. Even as we enter a more challenging and uncertain era, even if we get crises thrown our way, both expected and totally unexpected, I'm a deep optimist. We will go through ups and downs in Singapore, but we remain a unique place where we can always work together to make the future better for all Singaporeans. That has to be Singapore. And I'm convinced we can do it, dealing with difficulties forthrightly, building and rebuilding trust in the Singapore system and amongst our people, and most fundamentally, having deeper respect for each other, regardless of social background, race or religion, or differing views, having deeper respect for each other. That underpins social mobility, social justice, and an inclusive society, having deeper respect for each other. And I intend to promote that if I'm fortunate enough to be elected as president. So I'm convinced in Singapore's future and in the Singapore system. And in a more challenging era, I do feel I can play an important role to preserve that future for Singapore.